Brad Large back with you again. We're going through Matthew chapter 16 now, and this section is about Peter and his shenanigans. So we pick up after Jesus warns the Pharisees and Sadducees come and ask him for a sign, and then he warns the disciples about false doctrine and false teaching. And then in verse 13 we pick up with Jesus. I'll just start in verse 13. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." Then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ. So again, it's kind of an interesting thing because he has this really intense conversation, and Simon Peter replies, "You are the Christ," right? He's actually saying, "You are the Messiah, you're the Christ." And Jesus, after saying, "Yes, and I'm going to build my church, you're going to build my church. On this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Like this idea that evil is not going to prevail against the church. That's crazy. Because a lot of people have this theology now that we don't win on earth, that earth is going to be melted away in the tribulation, or I'm not exactly sure, so don't crucify me over it. But there's this idea that the earth is going to be gone away with, and that it's not going to be where it's not going to be saved. And right here it says, "I will build my church, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." The gates of hell shall not prevail against the earth. And whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And the fact that he's giving him the keys of the kingdom of heaven, right? And even in the Lord's Prayer, hallowed, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. So we're to do everything we can to bring the kingdom about here. And the church is one of the primary instruments to do that. And I think it's funny because it talks about leaven a couple sections before this, and the kingdom of heaven is likened to leaven that works its way through a tremendous amount of flour, enough to feed like 100 people. So this idea that Jesus is talking about them, and anyway, I'm going to go on actually for now. But this idea of leaven in the kingdom of heaven I think is important, especially in the upcoming verses. So from that time Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "Far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you." But he turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." So, it's pretty crazy, because he just told Peter he's going to build his church on him, and then Peter comes up and does this. So does it seem like they get it completely? But is Jesus still inviting them to take part in the story and to be used for God's glory? So in verse 24, "Then Jesus told his disciples, 'If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." So that's a very interesting verse right there. "Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." So taken together, I think that this is something that I've been going through, because eschatology is the end times and study of how everything shakes out in the end. And it's very confusing to me in a lot of ways. But verses like this actually help clear it up. And it's kind of amazing how it does that, because this idea of leaven, we start with the Pharisees and Sadducees, and Jesus saying there's not going to be a sign except for the sign of Jonah, which is just the biggest sign, the death and resurrection, right? And even with that sign, the Pharisees and Sadducees reject that sign. Which, okay, so that's ironic, right? And then it goes on and he says, beware the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, right? And then there's a parable where Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like leaven that spreads throughout the flour. So he's setting up this leaven of the world and leaven of the kingdom. And then when he's talking to Peter, he's saying, on you're the rock I'm going to build the church on. And when I build this church, the gates of hell are not going to prevail against it, and I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. This is very interesting. So this idea of the kingdom of heaven, right, being likened to leaven, is going to spread, and evil is not going to prevail against it. And when you think about church history, I mean, ever since Jesus' death and resurrection, up until now, the church has continuously grown. There are countries where it hasn't, right? Secularism is on the rise in Western society, and there are different arguments to be made. But worldwide, Christianity is still one of the biggest growing religions. And especially with the odds stacked against it the way that it is. I mean, Christian nations are unique in the fact that Islamic communities can still grow in a Christian nation without persecution. I know that there are nations where they are also persecuted. I get that. But what I'm saying is America is unique in that regard. And so that's not the rule for religions, that you allow other religions to even express themselves. But so this idea of leaven growing throughout the world, that's the kingdom of heaven has been growing. And I think that when we look at that historically, it's easy to see that when he's talking to the disciples, and he says, truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. What does that mean? The disciples are literally going to see the death and resurrection of Jesus, which is going to bring about the new age, and which is the last days, right? What Peter and Paul and others refer to as the last days. And these last days are establishing the kingdom of heaven, right? Bringing the kingdom, thy kingdom come, Christians, the church, participating in the kingdom and bringing about the kingdom in the best way that we can, being used by God, submitting ourselves to his will to bring about the kingdom of God. And so I think that that's kind of an interesting point here. The call for Peter, on you, this rock, I'm going to build my church. I'm going to give you the kings. And then Peter says, Lord, far be it from you, Lord, to be crucified. And Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. So I think that's a moment of humanity here. We see Peter's humanity, Jesus's divinity in this. He's saying, look, don't set your mind on the things of the world, set them on the things of God. This is the way that it has to be. But Jesus even knows now, and we see Jesus' humanity in the Garden of Gethsemane later on, when he's saying, if this cup can pass. But for right here, it's tying in. Jesus is saying, all the prophecies were leading to this moment, and I know the role I have to fulfill, and I'm trying to get you guys to recognize your role, right, to be able to see that, and I'm doing my part, do your part. And he's rebuking them. And he knows exactly where they're supposed to be. He knows their heart, right? But that doesn't stop him from rebuking the disciples when needed, right? So is he a nice guy? Yeah. Is he also a harsh teacher? Yeah. So I think that's kind of interesting. But that wraps up chapter 16 there. So lots of good information in chapter 16. The eschatology thing is something I'm really trying to wrap my head around. So if you have any questions about that, put them down below, because I'm kind of trying to tackle those. But like I said, like and subscribe to all these to catch them as they come out. I really enjoy studying the Bible with you and going through this, and I hope that it's sparking some conversation and ideas for you to look into your own Bible study, and that this is giving you a nice pace to go through and adding to the depth that you're able to dig into the Bible. So I hope it's doing that at least a little bit. But that's all I have today. So peace.